nation's godly history in the American Heritage Series. America, this is your heritage.
There was a great study done some years ago by political science professors. They said, you know, the Constitution is a remarkable document. It has ideas that have never before been written down in any previous Constitution. These are novel ideas. Where did the Founding Fathers get these novel ideas? Because our Constitution is not a collection of the world's greatest constitutions.
Right.
I mean, in 1787, they didn't say, oh, let's take 2 clauses from the French Constitution, 2 from the Russian, let's take 1 from the Haitian, 1 from the Helvetican. These are brand new ideas. So these ideas put in a piece of paper, they've been talked about, but they've never been put in a document. Where'd they get their ideas? These political science professors determined that if they could collect 15,000 writings out of the founding era, read those writings and see who they quoted, they would know where the founders get their ideas. They'd know where those ideas, their origins. So they took those 15,000 writings, took them a decade to document, but they found 3,154 direct quotes in those documents. They took all of those direct quotes back to their original source. End of a decade, they could say, we've studied it, we know where every one of these quotes came from, we know the source. Turned out the #1 most cited source in the founding era when the Constitution was constructed was the Bible.
Wow.
34% of all quotes. The next cited source was Montesquieu at 8.3%. So you're talking a 4-time differential between your #1 source, the Bible, and #2, Montesquieu. Then you come to Blackstone at 7.9, then Locke at 2.3, and on down through your sources. So the Bible, far and away, many times over, is the most cited source during the time when the Constitution was written. That's a pretty good indication it's not a godless document. Numbers of other founding fathers and early American political leaders also declared that America was guided by or founded on Christian principles. Among those making such declarations were Elias Boudinot, a president of Congress during the Revolution, and signers of the Declaration Charles Carroll, John Hancock, Benjamin Rush, Stephen Hopkins, and Samuel Adams. Also citing Christian principles as foundational are Constitution signers George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Rufus King, John Dickinson, and Roger Sherman. Others making similar declarations about Christian principles in America include Samuel Chase, a signer of the Declaration and a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, original Supreme Court Chief Justice John Jay, Justice Joseph Story, Justice James Kent, Zephaniah Swift, author of America's first legal text, and the U.S. Supreme Court itself, not to mention the U.S. Congress, as well as numerous state Supreme Courts and state legislatures. Other famous Americans who claimed that America was a Christian nation or was built on Christian principles included leaders such as General William Eaton, leader of America's first war following the American Revolution, and Daniel Webster, the great defender of the Constitution. U.S. presidents declaring that America was a Christian nation or that it was founded on Christian principles included John Quincy Adams, Abraham Lincoln, Woodrow Wilson, Zachary Taylor, Harry Truman, Andrew Jackson, William McKinley, Herbert Hoover, and Teddy Roosevelt. Educational leaders who taught students in classic American textbooks that Christianity was the basis of our country and its government included notables such as Noah Webster, the schoolmaster to America, Jedediah Morse, the father of American geography, and William McGuffey of the famous McGuffey Readers. All of these and so many more founding fathers, leaders, educators, and official departments of government declared that America was a Christian nation or that it was influenced by or built on Christian principles by Christian leaders.
There is an attempt to rewrite history. I think that's a theme inside of the episodes that we have put together. There is a thematic element that revisionism or a revisionist is attempting to either completely walk away from documentation or to cite very few small examples and make it seem like they're painting all of the of the founding fathers the same brush. So ultimately, original intent and some of the works that prove You go back to the original documents, to the original words, to the original Founding Fathers' own writings, and we're finding something 180 degrees that we were taught in school.
And what they do with revisionism is not just get things wrong. One of the greatest forms of revisionism is omission. And that's really hard to identify. I mean, if you have a textbook that says Abraham Lincoln dropped a nuclear weapon on Korea to end World War I, we'd all say, that's wrong. That's wrong on 4 counts. But if you have a textbook that doesn't even mention Abraham Lincoln, then you don't notice that. What's not there, you have a tendency not to see. That's one of the greatest forms of revisionism, is simply not to talk about certain elements that had been so significant for so long.
Wow.
Now, you do get some revisionism in textbooks like this. It says it's a godless constitution. That is a rewriting of what's there. But then you also simply get textbooks that don't talk anything about any founding father, about faith or lack of faith, that they're just silent. And that is the worst form of insult, is to be ignored. And that's what we've done with large portions of American history, simply ignore it. We simply don't talk about it. And that's just as substantial a form of revisionism as is absolutely saying something wrong and rewriting it and making it into something it never said. So that's a form that we have to deal with. But that omission is what causes us not to know the reasons that the Constitution really is not a godless document.
A closer look into our nation's history reveals surprising and irrefutable evidence of the Bible's influence on our founding fathers and our nation's Constitution. But does a biblically inspired Constitution make America a Christian nation? And is there a place for the Bible in today's modern political climate? Discover our nation's godly history in the American Heritage series. America, this is your heritage.
The number one source of the quotes, help me understand it again. So just help me. The number one source of the quotes that the Founding Fathers found were traced back to the Bible.
That's right. The quotes that they used in political writings describing why they did what they did. Why did they do separation of powers? Where did they come up with the idea of separation of powers? Why did they do checks and balances? Where did they come? You read all the writings that dealt with all those issues, and you see who they're quoting. Well, they'll quote Montesquieu because Montesquieu talks about separation of powers. They'll quote different entities, but when you track every quote back, 3,154 quotes, you track them all back to see the source. The overwhelming source of those ideas is the Bible.
And we have people wanting to tell us we have a godless constitution.
That's right. But we buy that. I mean, by and large, most Americans buy that. Government is a secular institution. It was designed that way. It's supposed to be that way. Why would they say that? They don't know, but they've never heard any evidence that would indicate otherwise.
I see.
Right.
And so what happens is the absence of evidence is proof of what the assertion is. So when they say it's a godless constitution, I don't know of any evidence that disproves that. They must be right. And that's where most Americans are. That they don't know about the study of political scientists. They don't know what's called the Sundays Accepted Clause. They don't know about the Common Law Clause in Article 7. They don't know about the 4 oath clauses that are there. They don't know about in the Year of Our Lord clause that appears. There's 6 aspects of the Constitution that absolutely disprove any notion that it's godless. But we don't know what those are. In 1854, following an extensive 1-year investigation, a report in the U.S. Congress succinctly declared,
had the people during the Revolution had a suspicion of any attempt to war against Christianity, that revolution would have been strangled in its cradle. At the time of the adoption of the Constitution and the amendments, the universal sentiment was that Christianity should be encouraged, but not any one denomination. In this age, there can be no substitute for Christianity. That was the religion of the founders of the Republic, and they expected it to remain the religion of their descendants.
and half a century later, in 1892, the U.S. Supreme Court also conducted a thorough review of American history. After citing more than 60 historical precedents, the court concluded,
there is no dissonance in these declarations. There is a universal language pervading them all, having one meaning. They affirm and reaffirm that this is a religious nation. This is a Christian nation.